welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going into a really difficult case. It's about severe abuse, neglect, and what happens when the justice system confronts that.
Yeah, it's a tough one. We're looking at the case of Evan, an adopted autistic child, and his adoptive parents, Mr. and Mrs. Schimmel.
And our source material is from the Japufact podcast. They used narration, some audio recreations of the courtroom, especially the judge's own words during sentencing.
Exactly. And our goal here isn't, sensationalism. It's about understanding the sheer cruelty, the judge's very powerful reaction, and, what justice looks like for someone so vulnerable.
Right. It's kind of that moment where you see the system grappling with something truly awful, but you also have to face the horror that made it necessary.
Mm-hmm. And the judge's opening words really set the stage. He spoke directly to the Schimmels.
What did he say?
He said, Mr. and Mrs. Schimmel, I've been an attorney for over 20 years, a prosecutor for a lot of that time.
Okay. So experienced.
Very. He said, I've seen the unimaginable murders, child abuse, unspeakable depravity, but nothing I have seen in 2 decades prepared me for what you did to Evan.
Wow. Straight out of the gate. That hits hard, especially from someone who's seen so much.
It really does. He listed things like prosecuting child molesters, seeing victims of terrible violence, even a case where a child was tortured to death.
Good grief.
And then he says, and yet, what you two did, it's on a level I still can't fully comprehend. It just shows how extreme this situation was.
Okay, so let's establish who Evan was. Not just a child, but adopted and autistic. That means he had, specific needs, right?
Absolutely. He needed more than just basic care. He needed real love, understanding, patience, structure, safety, above all.
And the cruelty he faced was apparently so shocking it floored even seasoned legal professionals. It's a complete betrayal, really.
It is. And one detail the judge focused on, speaking to Mrs. Schimmel, was about when Evan actually managed to escape.
He ran away.
He got out, yes, and the police found him. The judge said to her, your first question should have been, is he okay? But you didn't ask. Not even once.
It's chilling.
Yeah.
Just a fundamental lack of basic concern.
Exactly. It suggests, a complete breakdown of that parental instinct, almost like she didn't see him as her child, needing protection, dehumanizing.
And the physical evidence backed this up, didn't it? The state Evan was in when he finally got help.
Oh, absolutely. The descriptions from the hospital, just heartbreaking. He was severely starved.
I remember reading he trembled when he ate.
Yes, he trembled as he ate.
Yeah.
Terrified someone might take even the crumbs from his napkin.
Oh, man. Be that scared of losing even a crumb. It tells you everything about the deprivation he lived through.
It really paints a picture of constant fear and hunger.
Now, there were other children involved, weren't there? In the house?
Yes, and the judge actually addressed that in the sentencing. He noted the Schimmels chose not to have the other children testify against them, and he said, for that, there is some measure of mercy. And I considered that when determining your sentence.
So acknowledging they spared the other kids that trauma, but also maybe hinting that there was more to the story there.
It certainly raises questions. It shows the court balancing getting evidence with protecting other kids. A tough spot to be in.
Yeah, definitely. Then there's that moment where the judge talks about the limits of the law.
Right. That was incredibly powerful. He basically said, look, the Constitution prevents cruel and unusual punishment, and I have to follow that. But, he added, believe me when I say, if I weren't limited by law, I would hand down a punishment that matched what you did to Evan.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You don't often hear a judge speak that plainly with that level of personal revulsion, I guess.
No, you don't. It shows how deeply this affected him. It also sort of highlights that tension, doesn't it, between the legal framework and maybe a human desire for, a different kind of justice in extreme cases.
A justice that truly fits the crime, yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that translate into the actual sentence for Mrs. Schimmel?
Okay, so for Mrs. Schimmel, count 1, criminal attempt to commit a felony that got 20 years in prison.
Right.
Count 2, cruelty to children, first degree, another 20 years. And crucially, this was consecutive.
Meaning one after the other.
Exactly. So that's 40 years right there. Then count 3, another cruelty charge, got 20 years probation, also consecutive, so it only starts after the 40 years in prison.
So potentially 60 years before she's fully done with the system.
Potentially, yes. Then there were other counts served concurrently, meaning at the same time as the first 40. Aggravated battery, more cruelty counts, battery, false imprisonment.
False imprisonment locking him up.
Essentially, yes, unlawfully restraining him. Counts 8 and 9 were for that, 10 years each concurrent. Aggravated assault, aggravated battery. All concurrent.
But the key is those first 40 years are consecutive. That pretty much guarantees she's not getting out anytime soon, if ever.
That seems to be the clear intention. It's a life sentence, effectively.
And there were conditions attached too, right? If she ever did get to probation.
Oh, very strict conditions. No contact with any victims, including her children, ever.
Makes sense.
Banished from the whole judicial circuit, 4 counties. She has to submit to searches anytime, no warrant needed, DNA sample on file.
Total supervision.
Pretty much. No drugs or alcohol, obviously. And a lifetime ban on any contact with minors. Period.
Wow. Okay. And Mr. Schimmel, how did his sentence compare?
Remarkably similar, actually. Count 1, the attempt charge, 20 years prison.
Okay.
Count 2, cruelty to children, another 20 years. Again, consecutive.
So the same 40 years up front.
Exactly the same initial 40 years incarceration.
Okay.
Then count 3, cruelty again, 20 years probation, also consecutive, starting after the prison time.
Just like her.
Just like her. And the other counts, aggravated battery, more cruelty, battery, false imprisonment, all served concurrently with that initial 40 years.
So the court really saw them as equally responsible, it sounds like.
The sentences strongly suggest that, yes, equal culpability for what happened to Evan.
And presumably the same strict conditions apply to him.
Identical conditions, no contact with the kids, banished from the counties, submit to searches, no drugs, alcohol, lifetime ban on contact with minors,
No.
complete surveillance and control intended.
Right. And then the judge wrapped things up.
He did. He formally told them both they had the right to appeal within 30 days, standard procedure.
Uh-huh.
But then he stated very clearly, the sentence is now formalized. That will be the sentence of this court. End of story for that day.
Yeah. The Japufact host had a really moving reflection after detailing all this. Something about Evan's voice.
Yes, that was powerful. The quote was something like, Evan's voice wasn't heard in that courtroom, but through the evidence, through his scars, his story came through loud and clear.
Mhm.
This wasn't discipline. This wasn't parenting. This was torture.
Just lays it bare, cuts through any attempts to minimize it. It was torture.
Absolutely. And that leads right into the question they posed next, which is, well, it's haunting.
What was that?
For every case like this that makes it to court, how many others are hidden behind closed doors?
Ugh. Yeah. That's the question, isn't it? It makes you think about how much we don't see.
It really does. How many Evans are out there whose stories never come to light?
And the podcast was clear. Sharing, this isn't about, gawking at the horror.
No, not at all. The point was not to sensationalize or exploit this tragedy, but to remember the victims.
Right. And to shed light on justice being served and the immense pain that necessitates it. It's about acknowledging the reality, however ugly, and seeing accountability.
Precisely. This deep dive, looking right at the judge's words, shows the sheer awfulness of the abuse, but also how it impacted everyone involved in the legal process. And ultimately, it shows the justice system stepping up to hold these individuals accountable.
It's a grim but necessary look at that process. Thank you for joining us for this.
Yes.
It's this really heavy deep dive.
Of course. And maybe a final thought for you listening is to think about the systems we actually have in place, supposedly to protect vulnerable kids. Consider what more could be done. Within those systems, within our communities, what else can we do to strengthen those protections, to really try and make sure kids are safe and prevent tragedies like Evan's from happening again?